I'm Prabjot Kaur and this is Social Robotics Talk. And today we are going to be talking about how to create multitask data for direct speech-to-speech translation project. Initially, I wasn't going to make a video on this subject because creating this multitask data really depends on what type of data you are dealing with. So it might be very specific to your project. But since a lot of you asked, I'm going to share how I generated multitask data for my project. Before we go into those details, let's take a look at what the expectations are. So here they say that for each multitask, you need to give it a task name. So let's say the task that I choose is target words, which means I'm going to break up the text of the target language into words. So the task name is target words, and then you need to create a folder inside your data root folder with that same name. And then inside this folder is where you're going to place the TSV files, and those TSV files will contain the multitask data. And further, they're saying that the TSV files, they should be in this format. So you absolutely need to have headers. In the header, you have to have a column with the header called ID, and then you need to have another column which is called TGT underscore text. This is very, very critical because the way they're processing this, they are specifically looking for this keyword. So make sure you have that, and then after that you will have your data. So you need to do this for each of the multitask that you are wanting to prepare. So for today, we're just going to take a look at one multitask, which is creating the target words. So that's one thing. So once you have the TSV files, then you also need a dictionary, and you need to have a specific format of the dictionary. So we're going to take a look at how to generate these TSV files and how to generate this dictionary. And the third thing is we also need the config multitask YAML. And this, like I said previously in the last video, this can be generated just manually. So this is the easy part. But these two, TSV files and the dictionary.txt file, they need a little bit of pre-processing. So we will dive into the details of how I went about creating those. Okay. Now, before we jump into the code, I want to show again the type of data that I started with. So I am using Fluor's dataset, and I have the two languages that I was dealing with, Punjabi and English. So since we are interested in creating the target word as a multitask, in my case the target language is English, I'm going to be mainly paying attention to what the English data looked like. So when I downloaded the Fluor's dataset, the English dataset had this kind of structure. So it has the ID, and then it has for each sample, it has the raw WAV file, but then it also has the corresponding text. So this is the key. So in your case, if you don't have the text, if you don't have the transcripts for the audios, then you may have to somehow generate those transcripts first, such as using some ASR model. But you have to be very cautious because when you're using any ASR model, it might have some errors in the generated text. So that's just one caveat. So in my case, I already had the transcripts. So all I needed to do was just focus on this column here and break these text into words, and that will give me the target word data that I need for the target word task. Okay, now let's go into the details. Okay, so when we break the sentence into words, we call it tokenizing. So I used a toolkit called NLTK. It's just natural language processing toolkit, and this toolkit is pretty old, and this was the standard way of doing things in natural language processing, specifically to process the text before, I would say before ChatGPT came along. So this is what I used. Um, and then here are some downloads which you may not need. And then imports of the important stuff such as pandas, numpy. And then here I'm just basically loading my data. So my data is stored as data frame, so I'm just loading my data at this point, English data. And then the data frame of the English portion of the data set, as we saw before, it contained all of this information. Since I'm only interested in the transcripts, so I just pull out that column. So this English transcript underscore train English contains just that particular column. So far pretty straightforward, and I just do the same thing for dev test. And then the next step is basically to break down the text into words, and for that we take advantage of the toolkit and this lambda map function, and this is pretty simple to set up and use. So basically in this lambda function you just say that I want to word tokenize whatever sentence you give it, and this word tokenize is a predefined function in that toolkit. Okay, so once you define the lambda function, you can map that and you can basically apply that to the entire column, which I stored in a list. So this is a list containing the entire column of the transcripts that we saw here. So finally, I get this list which contains the sentences that are broken by words. So once we have the sentences broken down by words, your sentence will look like something like this. So you have the words that are broken down, and they have a comma as a separator. So far we have just broken down the sentences into words, but we haven't met the requirement of what they're looking for. So remember, so inside your TSV you need to have two things. You need to have an ID of the sample which should match the corresponding ID of the WAV file for which this sentence is or this transcript is. And then you need to have this header called target underscore text, and then this is where your words need to be. Pay very close attention to the format here. So as you can see, each word is separated by comma, and then each word is around the quotes. So pay close attention to the format here, because this is what we want. We want to generate this. And that's exactly what I do in this loop. I'm going to not go through the details of what I'm doing here because, like I said before, it really depends on how your data is set up. So I'm not going to go through the details, but I'm going to show you the results that I get out of it. So basically in here, in this, I am trying to create a pair. I'm trying to create a pair of the ID and the corresponding words in the sentence. So that's what I'm trying to do here. And I do that, and what I get at the end of this loop is a list, and that list has two columns, and then I just convert that list into a data frame. And finally, this is what it looks like. So eventually we want to convert this data frame to a TSV file, since that's what's expected. And for that, we simply use this function called to_TSV, and we specify this separator. We say tab separated, and this will generate a TSV file for you. Another important thing is that the name of the TSV file should be train.tsv, dev.tsv, and test.tsv. I just have here train underscore tokens, but I do when I use it, when I put it in the data root folder inside the target word, I do rename it. So it has to be train.tsv. So far we have this tsv files generated. So, and I do the same for dev and I do the same for test. Okay, that means we have completed this task. So I can now move on to the next step. Next step is we also need to create this dictionary, dict.txt, and it has to be in a certain format. So now let's take a look at how we can generate this dictionary. Okay, first of all, what's a dictionary? So dictionary is nothing but it basically tells you how many times a specific word occurs in your entire document. The document in this case being the transcripts that we were looking at. So for English, all of the transcripts. So that's really what dictionary is. It looks at the unique words and tells you how many times they occur in your document. So for that, I use this function called counter. Again, it is part of the NLTK library, and this helps you create a dictionary. So you say counter, and then you basically give it all the words that we calculated before in the loop, and when we tokenized it, and this will generate a dictionary for you. So it's really simple. The dictionary that it generates is going to have the words, and then it's going to tell you how many times it occurs. So like, for example, lead occurs 6 times, researchers occur 2 times, and so forth and so on. So then you can save this dictionary as a text file like I am doing here. So this is pretty simple stuff. However, this dictionary that has just been generated, it does not meet the FAIRSAKE format. So the dictionary that this is generating, this particular function is generating, it looks like this. So it's basically, it has this format. So it has lead, and then it has this colon, and then the number. But the FAIRSAKE format does not have this colon, so we need to remove that. So that's pretty simple. I have a function that I wrote to do just that, post-processing to remove just this colon. I can share with you, but that is pretty simple piece of code. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's pretty simple. So you load your dictionary that was just generated, and then you basically remove this colon and replace that with space. So your final dictionary should look like this. Let's go under the target word and let's take a look at the dictionary, and you see that it's without the colons. So that's your dictionary. And that's really everything that we have to do to generate this multitask data. And you can play around with different types of multitask. I tried various things like source words, characters. So you can try whatever you want. But I think what we saw today was one way of generating the target words. And this is just one of the multitask you can generate. I hope this was helpful, and I'm going to share this file and also the other file which I just showed to post-process the dictionary that is generated here. I'll share these 2 files on Ko-fi and the Patreon, my Patreon. They come at a small price, so it's up to you whether you want to look at them or not, but they are available at a small price. But I hope whatever I shared today, this helps you to move forward. If there are further questions, please feel free to ask, and I would be happy to answer those. With that, thank you for supporting me, and Please consider subscribing to my channel, and I'm also now on Ko-fi and Patreon. Please join me there as well. And thanks again.